Hey everyone, welcome to Cyber Threats in Higher Education, how you can protect yourself, your systems, and your data. I'm Alan Baxter. I'm the Information Security Officer for the university. I've been in this role for about coming up on the last 2 years. Before that, I worked at another institution specifically focused on research cybersecurity at a high-performance computing facility. All told, I've got about 20 years in cybersecurity in a range of different industries, and a total about 6 years here in higher education. So thanks for being with us today to talk about cyber threats, something near and dear to my heart, obviously. These cyber threats have the potential to impact both our institution and our people. Of course, we're all aware of the news and the wider impact that cyber threats can have. But really, one of the themes that will come out throughout this presentation is that cybersecurity is a team sport. It's not something that can be relegated to one person or one particular small team off in a corner. It really requires an entire organization, and every one of us have a role to play in protecting our systems and our data. And as we'll understand, the potential consequences for failure to do that can be fairly significant. So let's see if I can change the slide here. All right, so I thought I would start out with a few basic facts here, just to talk about the general cyber threat environment. In 2021, the global economic impact of cybercrime reached around $6 trillion. This massive figure in financial losses really underscores the increasing sophistication and prevalence of cyber threats. As businesses and individuals rely more on technology, and as we're more dependent on information and data, cyber criminals have capitalized on these vulnerabilities, exploiting weaknesses in cyber infrastructure to orchestrate all sorts of different cyber attacks, which we'll talk a little bit about some different types of attacks today. From ransomware assaults, which we've probably all heard about ransomware, crippling essential services, as with the Colonial Pipeline attack, to data breaches compromising sensitive information. But the breadth and depth of cyber threats really has evolved into formidable challenges for organizations of all sizes, from small to large. Higher education notwithstanding that, obviously. Projections indicate an even more grim trajectory. Experts estimate an economic toll of cybercrime to soar from $6 trillion in 2021 to $20 trillion in 2026. Just an astronomical figure. This alarming surge really underscores the urgency for comprehensive cybersecurity measures to mitigate the risk to our people and our data. Even more alarming, one interesting fact, the World Economic Forum's classification of cybercrime as the third largest economy, trailing only the United States and China, highlights the gravity of this digital epidemic. Beyond the financial ramifications, cyber threats also pose significant geopolitical and societal implications, with nation states and non-state actors leveraging cyber capabilities for espionage, for sabotage, and for geopolitical maneuvering, including disinformation campaigns. As the digital landscape continues to evolve, collaboration between governments, business, cybersecurity experts, and all organizational stakeholders, as I mentioned, becomes increasingly crucial in fortifying our defenses and combating the pervasive threat of cybercrime and all these various cyber threats. There's a saying among various cybersecurity professionals: an attacker only has to find one vulnerability to have a major impact. Those of us responsible for defending against these threats have to address thousands of millions, if not millions, of vulnerabilities within our systems, our applications, and, as we're going to discuss in detail throughout this presentation, among humans. So let's dive a little bit deeper into what this threat environment looks like. The Verizon Data Breach Investigations Report really does a good job of collecting detailed data on some of the tactics and techniques that are used by cyber actors. And it's a very detailed annual publication providing detailed analysis of breaches and security incidents across a variety of industries worldwide, offering us really good insights into emerging trends, tactics, and threats. As we dive into the data in this report, it becomes increasingly evident that the human element remains a focal point in the battle against cyber threats. This report found that a staggering 75% of all breaches involve human factors. And there's various other studies that indicate even higher numbers where a breach or an incident can be attributed back to a human factor, whether through inadvertent errors, misuse of privileges, utilization or stolen credentials, or the cunning tactics of social engineering. Individuals often serve as unwitting accomplices in the cyber criminal playbook. This highlights the indispensable role of education and awareness as a key defensive strategy, and why we're here today, and why I appreciate your attendance even more. Even the most robust technological safeguards and defensive mechanisms can be compromised by human fallibility. The Verizon report sheds light on the presence of external actors as well, with approximately 83% of breaches attributed to external perpetrators. Now that we'll talk a little bit more about insider threats later. That's not to minimize the potential risks associated with insider threats, as they can be even more damaging than these external attacks. Within this threat landscape, financial gain is the primary motivator behind breaches and cyber attacks, with espionage being a very distant second. Attackers, they tend to employ a trifecta of tactics to infiltrate organizational defenses, with stolen credentials, phishing schemes, and exploitation of vulnerabilities emerging as the primary avenues of incursion. Whether through the use of phishing emails, the exploitation of software, whatever the case may be, these adversaries demonstrate a relentless ingenuity, and they're always adapting in their quest to breach organizational perimeters. The use of stolen credentials and social engineering advanced techniques really highlight, as I mentioned before, the reality that this is a team sport. So diving in a little bit more detail into our particular industry, the top 3 weekly cyber attacks by industry, number 3 being healthcare at 1,744 attacks. Number 2, government and military, close, similar number. The number 1 weekly cyber attacks per industry is higher education and research. Now, it's important to notice that there are some, or note that there are some limitations in this data, in that, that it's looking at particular types of attacks and so forth. But nonetheless, this highlights that not only are we immune from these threats, we're a top target. Why are we a top target? In the cyber landscape, higher education is a top target due to our sensitive data. We store personally identifiable information, financial records, healthcare, and research data, making us an enticing target to cyber criminals. Additionally, the transient student populations, where we have a constant turnover of our user base, they can create cybersecurity management challenges as well. And in particular, a high susceptibility to cyber scams. Further exacerbating the situation are that we have extremely complex networks relative to other organizations, such as a traditional government entity or a standard corporate network, as well as, unfortunately, the relatively slow adoption of cybersecurity measures and best practices. We, in higher education, have a culture of openness, a foundational principle in academia. This ethos, deeply ingrained in the fabric of higher education, promotes collaboration and the free exchange of ideas. However, it also inadvertently has led to slow adoption of cyber best practices, as early as information security efforts were largely focused on confidentiality, which was counter to these cultural norms. This openness, while fostering innovation, can create vulnerabilities, as it encourages a fluid exchange of information across interconnected systems. It's worth noting that the internet itself was born from the collaborative efforts of research institutions, highlighting the historical importance of openness in academia. Yet in today's digital landscape, this very openness necessitates a more nuanced approach to dealing with cybersecurity to safeguard against potential threats stemming from these porous boundaries and the wider internet. And again, our student populations, we see on a regular basis these romance scams, work study scams, gift card scams. I don't know about you, but when I was a student, anything that involved potential money in my bank account was a welcome invitation. And unfortunately, malicious cyber actors have leveraged that ability to entice students and various stakeholders throughout our populations for malicious purposes. So going into some more specific incidents, if you're not familiar, I want to talk about a few of them. Every year, there's a long list of higher education institutions that have unfortunately fallen victim to cyber incidents. In August 2023, the University of Michigan severed ties with the internet due to a security concern on the first week of classes, widely disrupting campus operations. The internet was down for nearly a week, and 230,000 individuals' sensitive information was impacted. Penn State, as we start to see a growing evolution of the compliance environment and the regulatory environment that tries to adapt to the cyber threat environment, various external entities, state laws, federal laws have specific cybersecurity requirements. So now universities are dealing with compliance-related issues that can put them in jeopardy of not having a good cybersecurity posture. So Penn State is dealing with the False Claims Act case right now as a result of that. Mercer University noticed on April 5th, 2023, that someone had unauthorized access to its servers, only to learn that attackers had roamed its systems for nearly 2 weeks in early February. According to the information that Mercer provided to the Attorney General, it impacted over 93,000 people, exposed Social Security numbers, other IDs, documents of various sensitivity. And then closer to home on February 25th, Southern Louisiana University in Hammond, Louisiana reported a data breach and network issues widely believed to be a ransomware attack. And then lastly, in July of 2023, the National Student Clearinghouse, which houses a massive amount of sensitive data for a large number of higher education or education institutions, announced that it had been compromised as a result of a zero-day exploit or an exploit that was not previously known, involving a particular file transfer software solution. Education institutions, again, across the nation were impacted. This incident, specifically the National Student Clearinghouse incident, underscores the importance of third-party risk management as organizations rely more on external providers to manage data and provide services, potentially exposing the institution to unmeasured risks. So in tackling cybersecurity within our organization, it's worth openly discussing our phishing awareness campaigns. These efforts are vital in bolstering our defenses as we talk about social engineering threats. 4 of our faculty and staff members are susceptible to phishing attacks. This is particularly relevant given the prevalence of social engineering employed by cyber criminals. The campaigns are proactive measures that are intended to cultivate a cultural vigilance among our various stakeholders and equip everyone with the necessary skills to recognize and thwart phishing attempts. It's worth discussing these awareness campaigns. They employ tactics akin to those used by actual attackers by simulating these real world attack scenarios, they provide valuable hands-on experience and reinforce cybersecurity best practices. The overarching goal is to empower our users and every member of our organization to differentiate between genuine communications and potential threats and ensure the protection of both our people and our information assets. As we dive a bit deeper into this topic, it becomes evident that a proactive approach is paramount in safeguarding our information assets. So what can we do? One idea involves understanding and combating social engineering tactic, which remains a prevalent avenue for cyber attacks, as I've mentioned extensively already. As previously mentioned, these tactics are often involved in the very earliest stages of a complex cyber attack. Sometimes they can impact individual data, but often they can spiral into multi-million-dollar damages, reputational damages, extensive lawsuits, and so forth for organizations. So from classic phishing schemes to more sophisticated spear phishing and whaling attacks, as well as vishing, pretexting, baiting, tailgating, and watering hole, we'll go into all of these techniques because they pose a significant risk to organizational security and how we can best mitigate them. So phishing involves tricking an individual into revealing sensitive information such as usernames, passwords, or financial details by posing as a trustworthy entity in an electronic communication, such as email. Spear phishing, it's exactly the same thing, except it's very targeted. So in this case, this often involves gathering information about a particular target to make the phishing attempt more convincing and increase the chances of success. Whaling is a targeting form of phishing that specifically aims to at high-profile individuals. Typically and frequently, what we see is this would be aimed at like a chief financial officer, a CEO. The goal is to trick these individuals into revealing sensitive information or performing an action that can be detrimental to the organization. And we'll go through some examples of what the impacts of this looks like later. Phishing is the same thing as all the previous, except it's just using voice versus messaging capabilities. Pretexting is the act of creating a fabricated scenario or a pretext to manipulate an individual into divulging personal or confidential information. Baiting involves enticing individuals with something desirable like free software download or a USB drive. What we see a lot at universities is the use of BitTorrents to download quote unquote free software from Tor networks, and almost 9 times out of 10 this stolen software or stolen intellectual property is going to have malware in it or malicious software. Tailgating is sort of in the physical realm. It involves when an unauthorized person physically follows an authorized individual into a restricted area, taking advantage of their access. And lastly, a watering hole attack. A watering hole attack involves compromising a website or creating a fake website and then targeting a specific a group of users that whatever you're trying to target. In order to gain access to the user system. So we might create a trusted login page that looks just like a login page at the university in order to harvest credentials or login information and usernames and so forth. Business email compromise has emerged as a primary threat. I don't have the exact numbers, but it's in the billions every year, and it's a very effective technique that we see at USM. We see attempts by malicious actors to do this, and really organizations across the country see. BEC, it stands for business email compromise. It's a type of sophisticated cyber attack where attackers use social engineering techniques to compromise business email accounts for financial gain or unauthorized access. They do this to impersonate a trusted entity inside of the organization, such as a company executive or a business partner, to manipulate individuals into transferring funds, doing wire transfers, or providing some sensitive information. BC attacks, they can take various forms such as CEO fraud, invoice scams and fake invoices, vendor email compromises, and so forth. The potential impacts of business email compromise can result in significant financial losses to organization. Compromised data, business email compromise that can result in the exposure of sensitive business data, financial records, customer information, reputational damage, operational disruption. BC can disrupt business operations, particularly if it's used in conjunction with more sophisticated attack methods. And then lastly, fraudulent activities to do wire transfers and so forth. So a few examples of business email compromise in recent history. Ubiquity Networks, which is a tech company, hackers compromised the CEO's email account, and it was actually eventually determined that the malicious actor was inside the organization. But they used the email, used it to email the finance department requesting a $46.7 million wire transfer for quote unquote urgent acquisition. The outcome of this was Ubiquity lost $38.6 million, but they were eventually able to recover $8.1 million. Sometimes if you notify the correct authorities, such as the Secret Service or the FBI, within a short time span, they may be able to recover some of these funds. Another example was a French real estate developer, which was a fairly recent one. Hackers compromised the CFO's email account and impersonated a lawyer working on a major acquisition. They convinced the CFO to transfer 38 million euros to a fraudulent bank account. And the outcome was that the company lost the entire 38 million. And not to go into specifics at USM, but we definitely see this. We see the attempts by malicious actors to compromise legitimate accounts so that they can be used for follow-on malicious activities. So going back to social engineering, as we previously discussed, we may be familiar with the recent MGM hack. It hit the news last year. It resulted in a system-wide outage and an anticipated loss of $100 million due to a ransomware attack. This highlights the increasing threat of voice social engineering attacks. Reports suggest that the breach exploited a weakness in the company's IT help desk involving social engineering methods. And despite the use of multi-factor authentication, hackers were able to convince the help desk to reset MFA. This attack was orchestrated by the cyber threat group Scattered Spider. These threat groups, I promise you, I can't pronounce them all. They're all really clever. But Scattered Spider is renowned for their proficiency in social engineering, primarily because of their very proficient in English here in the United States. And MGM Resorts fell victim to an impersonating and phishing scheme. Scattered Spider utilized LinkedIn, identified an existing MGM Resorts employee, assumed their identity, and successfully called the MGM IT help desk, seeking assistance with account login. During the 10-minute call, the attackers cleverly gained administrator privileges to MGM's Okta and Azure tenant environments. The subsequent discovery of unusual activity and traffic by MGM's security team prompted action. The interesting thing about this attack is it was actually two groups. It was Scattered Spider on the engineering front, and then doing the actual technical work was a group called ALPV, and I can't pronounce that. I don't know if it's ALF or ALPV. It's ALPHV. A group associated with the Scattered Spider. They admitted to sniffing passwords on MGM's authentication servers, or Okta, leading MGM to deactivate these servers and sync infrastructure components. This preventative measure, while interrupting critical systems like reservation systems, digital room keys, and slot machines, was aimed to prevent escalation of the attack. Unfortunately, they were able to maintain ongoing access and were able to deploy ransomware to over 100 ESXi hypervisors within GM network. And you can just think of this as the hypervisor as the layer where basically all of their important data, servers, infrastructure exists. While the attackers claim to have exfiltrated the data, the extent to which PII, it was eventually confirmed that there was a great deal of sensitive information, specifically customer information, that was compromised. Additionally, the attackers threatened to notify Troy Hunt of "have I been pawned" unless they reached an agreement. And so this is kind of an interesting technique and tactic that's being used by malicious actors to extort their victims. They're actually even threatening to report breaches to potentially regulatory entities or government entities if the organization doesn't meet their demands. So ransomware, we've kind of touched on this a little bit, but this is an important topic. It's something that's in the news on a regular basis now. So I thought it would be worth covering. What is ransomware? Ransomware, frequently it's thought of as a type of malicious software, but it's actually a little bit more broader than that. It's a group. It's usually a combination of attack techniques that results in encryption or corruption of the victim's data, making it inaccessible. Increasingly, we're seeing more corruption versus encryption now because it's faster, less processive, and less process intensive. So they will just corrupt the data, but they will exfiltrate it first and have clean set up the data, and then they'll extort their victims for a ransom, often demanding cryptocurrency because of its not easy to trace, in exchange for providing the victim with necessary decryption key to regain access to their files and so forth. Ransomware, there are a diverse range of targets. These ransomware actors, they can target individuals, they can target businesses, and even government entities, causing disruption, financial losses, and potential data breaches. Some of the trends that we see in ransomware: double extortion is where attackers steal data before encryption, adding pressure to pay with threats. And a particularly dark trend in the cyber threat world are these as-a-service models. So just as we have software as a service, you can think about Microsoft 365. These threat actors have as-a-service models that you can subscribe to, where you can get pre-built attack kits, in the case of ransomware as a service, making launching ransomware easier for less skilled criminals. Multi-stage attacks, initial malware infection followed by targeted ransomware deployment for a high-value target, and then supply chain attacks, which really highlights the importance for third-party risk management for organizations. It involves compromising vendors to infiltrate entire ecosystems and hit multiple organizations. Some examples in higher education: in 2020, a cyber attack using spear phishing emails compromised the University of Utah's financial systems, leading to around a $500,000 payment. Phishing attacks tailored to specific individuals like financial staff or even faculty, they're becoming more sophisticated and can bypass traditional email filters and the defensive mechanisms that we put in place to protect the organization. Ransomware as a service, I already kind of talked about that, but an example, the Hive ransomware gang, our ransomware as a service platform, has targeted several universities in recent years, including the University of Maine and Albany State University. Ransomware as a service, it's really making the ransomware even more pervasive, unfortunately. And then we already talked about the University of Michigan, but it has been revealed that that was a ransomware attack. And it really was a significant attack based off of the scale. Essentially, cyber criminals infiltrated the university's IT systems, initially using, guess what, a phishing email, gaining unauthorized access to data. the attackers deployed ransomware, encrypting sensitive information stored on university servers. The university reacted pretty quickly, but unfortunately it was too late and resulted in large disruptions across the organization. So we've talked about what social engineering is and some specifics like business email compromise. We've talked about ransomware. We've said that social engineering is is one of the earlier stages of a cyber attack very frequently. So what can you do about it? Unfortunately, you just have to be skeptical of all digital communications these days. Be cautious when receiving unexpected emails, messages, or phone calls, especially if they ask for personal or sensitive information. Verify the identity of requesters. Before providing any information, verify the identity of the person or the entity making the request. I would strongly recommend doing this via an out-of-band mechanism. So if somebody's reaching out to you via message or via email saying they're from your bank, validate that through some out-of-band channel. Go look at the website or use a trusted phone number, call them and validate that that's the user. Do not correspond with them over the channel that the purported actor has reached out asking for sensitive information. Watch for urgency. Urgency is a really common one that attackers use because it creates confusion and it makes it a little bit easier for them to manipulate individuals. So be suspicious of any messages that demand immediate actions or convey a sense of impending danger. Check for unusual requests. Use your spider senses, as we say. Be wary of unusual requests for sensitive information, such as passwords, account details, or confidentiality. Legitimate organizations, we don't ask for this information. Our IT departments, we can do what we need to with the credentials that we have. We don't need or want your sensitive information. Use multi-factor authentication. And of course, we do this as an IT organization as widely as possible. But as an individual, where you have the option to enable multi-factor authentication, you should do this because this adds an extra layer of security, even if your login credentials are compromised. And then verify hyperlinks and attachments. We have some technical defensive technologies that do this for us. However, in personal email and so forth, you can hover over the link in an email and preview the URL before clicking. If it says it's one thing and you hover over it, it's a whole different link, then that's probably a sign that that's a malicious communication. Regularly review your privacy settings on all your social media. Review and update these settings and on social media and other online platforms. Limit the amount of personal information visible to the public as much as possible. And we'll talk more about that in detail because social media is an avenue of reconnaissance for malicious actors. So we talked about, the majority of threats are coming from outside the organization. It's a little bit of a complex thing to discuss because of the fact that we have malicious insiders and we have negligent insiders. So if you're kind of wondering about some of these statistics, that's where this sort of comes in. The Ponemon Institute's 2023 cost of data breach report found that 52% of data breaches involved an insider. IBM security estimates the average cost of an insider caused data breach to be $8.7 million compared to $4.24 million for externally caused breaches. And then Verizon's data breach investigation report reveals that 58% of insider breaches involve the theft of confidential data. So again, let's talk a little bit about intentional versus unintentional. Malicious insiders, they're typically driven by motives like revenge, financial gain, or espionage. They deliberately misuse their access. Examples include disgruntled employees leaking trade secrets or contractors selling customer data, or in our case, maybe student data on the dark web. Negligent insiders often are unaware of the consequences. They compromise security through carelessness or bad passwords, falling for phishing attacks, or downloading unauthorized software are common examples. Some signs to watch for are sudden changes in user behavior, increased downloads, unusual data access patterns, or spikes in file encryption activity. Financial difficulties or lifestyle changes, expression of dissatisfaction or resentment, and then violation of security policies, sharing passwords, which we always discourage, using personal devices for work, or ignoring security training. So social media, what I was talking about here is that attackers use social media as a valuable resource for gathering information. They exploit personal details shared on social media to build profiles for targeted cyber threats. Social media is a breeding ground for phishing attacks, where an attacker will try to send links over various social media platforms. Even YouTube can have malicious links that are embedded in it. Impersonation and identity theft. Attackers can impersonate individuals or organizations on social media, leading to identity theft, and all the bad possible compromises of sensitive information and systems and so forth. And then again, it's really used for reconnaissance for targeted attacks. Social media serves as a tool for attackers to gather information about a target's habits, interests, or connections, tailoring their approach for more convincing and successful attacks. And then physical security threats. Location data shared on social media can be exploited by attackers for physical threats, such as burglary, stalking, or posing these real-world risks to individuals. So some tips for social media usage: be cautious with friend requests. Be cautious when accepting friend requests or connection requests from unknown individuals. And even really, it could be from a known individual. Perhaps if somebody's posing as using a second profile, somebody that you're already friends with, would be a good sign that that's a fake profile. And fake profiles on social media are extremely prevalent. Be vigilant for phishing attempts on social media. Avoid clicking on suspicious links or opening messages from unknown sources in social media. Limit location sharing. Avoid sharing your precise location on social media, especially if it's not necessary. Be mindful of the potential security risks associated with disclosing your whereabouts. Monitor third-party applications. Often with social media, there are various third-party applications connected to your social media accounts. Remove any applications that you don't use or trust. Some of these applications may have access to your personal information. And think before sharing. Is this something that you want the whole world to know? Consider the potential impact of sharing certain content, whether it could be used against you to compromise your security. Always log out of shared devices and report suspicious activity. So I thought this one was fairly interesting. I'm going to get through these. I've got a couple more slides here, but in light of some of the recent evolutions and some of the new changes in generative AI and the potential that it brings. Of course, it also brings some potential negative consequences, primarily with social engineering. It's actually going to reduce the potential spelling errors, which is one of the common signs of a standard phishing attack. And it has the potential for deploying attacks more efficiently at scale with less effort. Some specific malicious generative AI technologies that are already out there are DarkBART. This tool is a large language model, which is based off of BART, which was created by Google. DarkBART is designed to be used for malicious purposes, such as spreading misinformation, creating phishing scams, or generating deepfakes. It was originally created for legitimate cyber research, but malicious actors have claimed to have access to that platform. Worm GPT, this tool is based on a large language model. You may have heard of GPT. Worm GPT is designed to be used to create social engineering attacks, such as tricking people into giving up all the things that we just talked about, basically. Fraud GPT, this tool is also based on GPT-3. It's designed to be used to create fraudulent content, such as fake reviews, fake news articles, and fake social media posts. And I'm sure there will be many, many more to come. Deepfakes, I thought this was, in light of the detailed discussion here of social engineering, deepfakes fake is a type of synthetic media that uses artificial intelligence to realistically manipulate images, videos, or recordings. It's essentially it's a fake created using deep learning, a powerful form of AI that allows computers to learn and improve without explicit programming. It's being used for various malicious purposes, including synthetic identity fraud, where we're just basically creating entirely fake identities, impersonating executives and key personnel, and then business email compromise using fake audio to build trust. In 2019, a UK-based energy company fell victim to one of these and was tricked into transferring 220,000 euros by a fraudster over the phone using this technology. And more interestingly, you may have seen the news recently in Utah. There was a Chinese exchange student that was a victim of a cyber kidnapping scam. This involved the kidnappers using they instructed the victim to isolate themselves and provide photos as if they were being held captive. In this case, his parents, the victim's parents, were extorted for $80,000. And during this particular attempt, they used voice cloning. They were able to, enabled by AI, they created deepfake audio. And when communicating with the parents, they used this deepfake audio to make it seem like Kai was in distress and being held captive. Cyber criminals threatened to drug and physically abuse him, and that's what they were telling me. It was really a horrible thing, and it's just highlights the latest evolution of these types of scams. So just to kind of give some broad tips on how you can secure your data. With password management, the latest trend is passphrases. We've heard of passwords. Passphrases are just using a longer phrase like, I don't know, I want to go to Vegas 3 or something, and you capitalize different letters. Whatever your pattern may be, the longer the password, the more difficult it is to crack. However, no matter how long it is, it can be compromised. So don't reuse passwords. Once, if a malicious actor is able to compromise a large repository of passwords, a lot of times people don't change their passwords for a long time. So don't use the same passwords in across all different platforms, and then never share your password, obviously. Keep your systems, your applications, your security software. Most antivirus, traditional antivirus technologies, they require threat definitions to keep up with the latest viruses and so forth. And then, maintain knowledge of these threats like we're doing here today. And again, always approach digital communications with a healthy degree of skepticism. So we're here. We have an information security office here at USM. You can report any incidents to infosec@usm.edu and report phishing scams to spam@usm.edu. Definitely, if you receive these, we do review these every day, and it is particularly helpful, this reporting, so that we can identify trends and the latest tactics and techniques used by malicious actors that are trying to figure out ways to bypass our technical defenses. And I'll stop the share here and just ask if there are any questions. That's pretty much all I have here.